Om Namah Shivaya. Hey guys, welcome back to our e-teaching channel. In today's episode, we'll see chapter 5. Before getting into chapter 5, I'll shortly brief you up with what happened in chapter 4, the abode of the gods. In chapter 4, we saw Shiva, after a long struggle, arrived to Devgiri, the capital of Meluha, where he visits the emperor Daksha, the prime minister Kanakhala, and Parvateshwar, the chief of the army. And they inspect Shiva's Nilkanth, and they arrive to a conclusion that it is the true one. And they are truly astounded to see his blue throat, the Nilkanth. Om Namah Shivaya. Okay guys, let's get into chapter 5, Tribe of Brahma. Shiva was walking in the verdant gardens of the royal guest house. His things were being moved into the royal guest house by Nandi and Kanakhala's efficient aid. Shiva sat down on a comfortable bench overlooking a bed of red and white roses. The charming cool breeze in the open gardens brought a smile to his face. It was early afternoon and the garden was deserted. Shiva's thoughts kept going back to the conversation he had with the emperor in the morning. Despite Daksha's controlled reaction, Shiva could understand that his blue throat was of great significance to the Meluhans. Even to the emperor, it meant that the legend of Nilkanth, whatever it was not restricted to some small sect in Kashmir. If the emperor himself took it so seriously, all of Meluha must need the help of the Nilkanth. But what the bloody hell do they want help for? They are so much more advanced than us. His thoughts were distracted by the sound of a dhol, a percussion instrument, and some ghungroos, anklets worn by dancers. Someone seemed to be practicing in the garden. A hedge separated the dance pavilion from the rest of the garden. Shiva himself, a passionate dancer, would normally have stepped in to move to the rhythm of the beat, but his mind was preoccupied. Some words floated in from the group that was dancing. "No, my lady, you must let yourself go," said a distinguished male voice. "It's not a chore that you have to do. Enjoy the dance. You are trying too hard to remember all the steps rather than letting the emotion of the dance flow through you." Then a lady's voice interjected. "My lady, Guruji is right. You are dancing correctly, but not enjoying it. The concentration shows on your face. You have to relax a little bit. Let me get the steps right first. Then I can learn to enjoy them." The last voice made Shiva's hair stand up on end. It was her. It was Sati. He quickly got up and followed the sound of the voices coming up from behind the hedge. He saw Sati dancing on a small platform. She had her hands raised rigidly to her sides as she enacted the various movements of the dance. She danced in accordance with the steps, first to the left and then to the right. She moved her shapely hips to the side and placed her hands precisely on her waist to convey the mood of the dance. He was mesmerized once again. However, he did not notice that though Sati was dancing all her steps correctly, the Guruji was right. She was moving in a mechanical manner. The uninhibited surrender that is characteristic of a natural dancer was absent. The varying emotions of bliss and anger of the story being told were missing in her moves. And unlike a proficient dancer, Sati was not using the entire platform. Her steps were small, which kept her movements constricted to the center. The dance teacher sat facing her and playing on a door to give Sati her beats. Her companion Kritika sat to the right. It was the dance teacher who noticed Shiva first and immediately stood up. Sati and Kritika turned around as well and were clearly astonished to find Shiva standing in front of them. Unlike Sati, Kritika could not control her surprise and blurted out, "Shiva!" Sati, in her characteristic composed and restrained manner, asked sincerely, "Is everything all right, Shiva? Do you need my help for something? How have you been? I have missed you. Don't you ever smile." How have you been? I have missed you. Don't you ever smile. Shiva continued to stare at Sati, the words running through his mind, not on his lips. A smiling Kritika looked at Sati for her reaction. An even more serious Sati repeated very politely, "Can I help you with something, Shiva?" No, I don't need any help, replied Shiva as reality seemed to enter his consciousness again. "I just happened to be in the area and heard you dancing. Your talk. Your dance steps were not so hard that I could hear it. You were dancing very accurately. Actually, technically it was all," Kritika interjected. "You know a bit about dancing, do you?" "Oh, not much, just a little," said Shiva to Kritika with a smile. Before turning rapidly back to Sati, "My apologies, Sati, but Guruji is right. You were being far too methodical, as they say in the land, but I come from the mudras, and the kriyas were all technically correct. But the bhav or emotion was missing. And a dance without bhav is like a body without a soul. When the emotions of the dancer participate, she would not even need to remember the steps. The steps come on their own. The bhav is something that you cannot learn. It comes to you if you can create the space in your heart for it." Sati listened patiently to Shiva without saying a word. Her eyebrows were raised slightly as a barbarian spoke. How could he know more than a Suryavanshi about dancing? But she reminded herself that he had saved her life. She was duty-bound to honor him. Kritika, however, took offense at this caste unmarked foreigner pretending that he knew more about dancing than her mistress. She glowered at Shiva. "You dare to think that you know more than one of the best dancers in the realm." Shiva gathered he may have caused some offense. He turned to Sati in all seriousness. "I am terribly sorry. I did not mean to insult you in any way. Sometimes I just keep talking without realizing what I am saying." No, replied Sati. "You did not insult me. Perhaps you are right. I don't feel the essence of the dance as much as I should. But I'm sure that with Guruji's guidance, I'll pick it up in due time." Seizing his chance to impress Sati, Shiva said, "If it is all right with you, may I perform the dance? I'm sure that I'm not as technically correct as you, but perhaps there may be something in the sentiment that will guide me through the correct steps." That was well put. She can't say no. Sati looked surprised. This was unexpected. Okay, she managed to say. A delighted Shiva immediately moved to the center of the stage. He took off the angvastram covering his upper body and tossed it aside. Kritika's quick anger at the perceived insult to her mistress was forgotten quickly as she sighed at Shiva's rippling physique. Sati, though, began to wonder how Shiva would bend such a muscular body into contortions that were required for this style of dancing. Flexibility was usually sacrificed by a human body at the altar of strength. Playing lightly on his dole, the Guruji asked Shiva, "Tell me the beat that you are comfortable with, young man." Shiva folded his hands into a namaste, bent low, and said, "Guruji, could you just give me a minute, please? I need to prepare for the dance." Dancing was something Shiva knew as well as warfare. Facing east, he closed his eyes and bowed his head slightly. Then he bent down on his knees and reverentially touched the ground with his head. Standing up, he turned his right foot outwards. Then he raised his left leg off the floor in a graceful arching movement till the foot was above knee height. As he bent his right knee slightly to balance himself, his left foot pointed in a direction exactly between the bearing of his right foot and his face. Only a calm breeze broke the almost deathly silence that enveloped the audience. The Guruji, Sati, and Kritika looked in amazement at Shiva. They did not understand what he was doing but could feel the energy that Shiva's stance was emanating. Shiva raised both his arms in an elegant circular movement to the sides to bring them in line with his shoulders. His right hand was molded into a position like it was holding an imaginary damru, a small handheld percussion instrument. His left hand was open with its palm facing upward, almost like it was receiving some divine energy. He held this pose for some time as his glowing face showed that Shiva was withdrawing into his own world. Then his right hand moved effortlessly forward, almost as if it had a mind of its own. Its palm was now open and facing the audience. Somehow, the posture seemed to convey a feeling of protection to a very surprised Sati. His left arm then moved slowly from its shoulder height position to come in front of him with the palm facing down. The left arm stopped moving when the hand was pointing almost directly at the left foot. Shiva held this pose for some time and then began the dance. Sati stared in wonder at Shiva. He was performing the same steps as her, yet it looked like a completely different dance. His hands moved effortlessly as his body moved almost magically. How could a body this muscular also be so flexible? The Guruji tried helplessly to get his dole to give Shiva the beats, but clearly that was not necessary, for it was Shiva's feet which were leading the beat for the dole. The dance conveyed the various emotions of a woman. At the beginning, it conveyed her feelings of joy and lust as she cavorted with her husband. Then it conveyed her fury and pain on the wrongful death of her mate. Even with Shiva's rough masculine body, he managed to convey the tender yet strong emotions of a grieving woman. Shiva's eyes were open, but the audience realized that he was oblivious to them. Shiva was in his own world. He did not dance for the audience. He did not dance for appreciation. He did not dance for the music. He danced only for himself. Rather, it almost seemed like his dance was guided by a celestial force. Sati realized that Shiva was right. He opened himself and the dance had come to him. After what seemed like an eternity, the dance came to an end, with Shiva firmly shutting his eyes. He held the final pose for a long time as the glow slowly left him. It was almost like he was returning to this world. Shiva gradually opened his eyes to find Sati, Kritika, and the Guruji gaping at him in complete awe. The Guruji was the first to find his words. "Who are you?" "I'm Shiva." No, not the body. I meant, who are you?" Shiva crooked his eyes together in a frown and repeated, "I'm Shiva." Guruji, may I ask you a question? Asked Sati. Of course, you may. Turning to Shiva, Sati asked, what was that you did before the dance? Was it some kind of preparatory step? Yes, it's called the Natraj pose, the pose of the Lord of Dance. The Natraj pose, what does it do? It aligned my energy to the universal energy so that the dance emerges onto its own. I don't understand. Well, it's like this. Amongst our people, we believe that everything in the world is a carrier of Shakti or energy. The plants, animals, objects, our bodies, everything carries and transmits energy. But the biggest carrier of energy that we are physically in touch with is Mother Earth herself, the ground that we walk on. What does that have to do with your dance? For anything that you do, you need energy. You have to source the energy around you. The energy comes from people, from objects, from Mother Earth herself. You have to ask for that energy respectfully. And your Natraj pose helps you to access any energy that you want. Ask the Guruji. It depends on what I want the energy for. The Natraj pose helps me to ask respectfully for energy for a dance that wants to come to me. If I wanted the energy for a thought to come to me, I would have to sit cross-legged and meditate. It seems that the energy favors you, young man, said Guruji. You are the Natraj, the Lord of Dance. Oh no, exclaimed Shiva. I'm just a medium of boundless Natraj energy. Anyone can be the medium. Well, then you are a particularly efficient medium, young man, said the Guruji. Turning to Sati, he said, you don't need me if you have a friend like him, my child. If you want to be taught by Shiva, it would be my honor to excuse myself. Shiva looked at Sati expectantly. This had gone much better than he expected. Say yes, damn it. Sati, however, seemed to withdraw into herself. Shiva was startled to see the first signs of vulnerability in this woman. She bowed her head, an act which did not suit her proud bearing, and whispered softly, I mean no disrespect to anyone, but perhaps I do not have the skills to receive training of this level. But you do have the skill, argued Shiva. You have the bearing, you have the heart, you can very easily reach that level. Sati looked up at Shiva, her eyes showing just the slightest hint of dampness. The profound sadness they conveyed took Shiva aback. What the hell is going on? I'm very far from any level, Shiva, mumbled Sati. As she said that, Sati found the strength to control herself again. The politely proud manner returned to her face. The mask was back. It is time for my puja. With your permission, Guruji, I must leave. She turned towards Shiva. It was a pleasure meeting you again, Shiva. Before Shiva could respond, Sati turned quickly and left, followed by Kritika. The Guruji continued to stare at a flummoxed Shiva. At length, he bent low with a formal namaste towards Shiva and said, It has been my life's honor to see you dance. Then he too turned and left. Shiva was left wondering at the inscrutable ways of the meluhans. It was late in the morning the next day when Shiva and Nandi entered the private royal office to find Daksha, Parvateshwar and Kanakala waiting for him. A surprised Shiva said, I'm sorry, Your Highness. I thought we were to meet 4 hours into the second prahar. I hope I have not kept you waiting. Daksha, who had stood up with a formal namaste, bowed low and said, No, my lord, you don't need to apologize. We came in early so that we would not keep you waiting. It was our honor to wait for you. Parvateshwar rolled his eyes at the extreme subservience that his emperor, the ruler of the greatest civilization ever established, showed towards this barbarian. Shiva, controlling his extreme surprise at the being referred to as the Lord by the emperor, bowed low towards Daksha with a namaste and sat down. My lord, before I start off my monologue about the legend of Nilakant, do you have any questions that you would like to ask? Inquired Daksha. The most obvious question came to Shiva's mind first. Why in the holy lake's name is my blessed blue throat so important? But his instincts told him that though this appeared to be the most obvious question, it could not be answered unless he understood more about the society of Meluha itself. It may sound like an unusual question, Your Highness, said Shiva, but may I ask what your age is? Daksha looked in surprise at Kanakala. Then turning back towards Shiva with an odd smile, he said, You are exceptionally intelligent, my lord. You have asked the most pertinent question first. Crinkling his face into a conspiratorial grin, Daksha continued, Last month I turned 184. Shiva was stunned. Daksha did not look a day older than 30 years. In fact, nobody in Meluha looked old, except for the Pandit that Shiva had met at the Brahma temple. So Nandi is more than 100 years old. How can this be, Your Highness? Asked a flabbergasted Shiva. What sorcery makes you this possible? There is no sorcery at all, my lord, explained Daksha. What makes this possible is the brilliance of our scientists who make a potion called the somras, the drink of the gods. Taking the somras at defined times not only postpones our death considerably, but it also allows us to live our entire lives as if we are in the prime of our youth, mentally and physically. But what is the somras? Where does it come from? Who invented it? So many questions, my lord, smiled Daksha, but I'll try my best to answer them one by one. The somras was invented many thousands of years ago by one of the greatest Indian scientists that ever lived. His name was Lord Brahma. I think there is a temple dedicated to him that I visited on the way to Devagiri, at a place called Meru. Yes, my lord, that is where he is said to have lived and worked. Lord Brahma was a prolific inventor, but he never took any of the benefits of his inventions for himself. He was always interested in ensuring that his inventions were used for the good of the mankind. He realized early on that a potion as powerful as the somras could be misused by evil men. So he implemented an elaborate system of controls on its use. What kind of controls? He did not give the somras freely to everyone, continued Daksha. After conducting a rigorous countrywide survey, he chose a select group of adolescent boys of impeccable character, one from each of the 7 regions of ancient India. He chose young boys so that they would live with him at his Gurukul and he could mold their character into selfless helpers of society. The somras medicine was administered only on these boys. Since these boys were practically given an additional life due to somras, they came to be known as the Dvija or twice born. With the strength of the somras, the training of Lord Brahma, and the numerous other inventions that they collectively produced, this group became more powerful than anyone in history. They honed their minds to achieve almost superhuman intelligence. The ancient Indian title for man of knowledge was Rishi. Since Lord Brahma's chosen men were 7 in number, they came to be known as the Saptarishi. and these Saptarishis use their skills for the good of society. Yes, my lord. Lord Brahma instituted strict rules of conduct for the Saptarishis. They were not allowed to rule or to practice any trade, essentially anything that would have caused them personal gain. They had to use their skills to do the task of priests, teachers, doctors, amongst other intellectual professions where they could use their powers to help society. They were not allowed to charge anything for their services and had to live on alms and donations from others. Tough service rules, joked Shiva with a slight wink at Parvateshwar. Parvateshwar did not respond, but Daksha, Kanakala, and Nandi guffawed loudly. Shiva took a quick look at the prahar lamp by the window. It was almost the third prahar, the time that Sati would probably come out to dance. But they followed their code of conduct strictly, my lord, continued Daksha. Over time, as their responsibilities grew, the Saptarishis selected many more people to join their tribe. Their followers swore by the same code that the Saptarishis lived by and were also administered the Somras. They devoted their lives to the pursuit of knowledge and for the well-being of society. Without asking for any material gain in return, it is for this reason that society accorded these people almost devotional respect. Over the ages, the Saptarishis and their followers came to be known as the Tribe of Brahma or simply the Brahmins. But as it usually happens with all good systems over long periods of time, some people stopped following the Brahmin code, right? Absolutely, my lord, answered Daksha, shaking his head at the all too familiar human frailty. As many millennia went by, some of the Brahmins forgot the strict code that Lord Brahma had enforced and the Saptarishis propagated. They started misusing the awesome powers that the Somras gave them for their own personal gains. Some Brahmins started using their influence over a large number of people to conquer kingdoms and start ruling. Some Brahmins misused other inventions of the Saptarishis and Lord Brahma to accumulate fabulous wealth for themselves. And some of the Brahmins interjected Kanakala with particular sense of horror, even rebelled against the Saptarishi Uttaradhikaris. Saptarishi Uttaradhikaris? Inquired Shiva. They were the successors to the Saptarishis, my lord, clarified Kanakala. When any of the Saptarishis knew that he was coming to the end of his mortal life, he would appoint a man from his Gurukul as his successor. This successor was treated for all practical purposes like the Saptarishi himself. So rebelling against the Saptarishi Uttaradhikaris was like rebelling against the Saptarishis themselves. Yes, my lord, answered Kanakala. And the most worrying part of this corruption was that it was being led by the higher chosen tribe, Brahmins like the eagles, peacocks, and the swans. In fact, due to their higher status, these chosen tribes were actually not even allowed to work under the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, lest they get enticed by the lure of the material world. Yet they succumbed to the temptations of evil before anyone else. And chosen tribes like yours, the pigeons, remain loyal to the old code despite working for the Kshatriyas, asked Shiva. Yes, my lord, replied Kanakala, her chest puffed up with pride. The town bell indicating the beginning of the third prahar sounded out loudly. All the people in the room, including Shiva, said a quick short prayer welcoming the new time chapter. Shiva had learned some of the ways of the meluhan. A Shudra came in, reset the prahar lamp precisely, and left as quietly as he came. Shiva reminded himself that any time now, Sati would start her dance in the garden. So, what revolution caused the change, Your Highness? Asked Shiva, turning to Daksha. You, Parvateshwar, and Nandi are Kshatriyas, and yet you clearly have taken the sombras. In fact, I have seen people of all four castes in your empire look youthful and healthy. This means that the sombras is now given to everybody. This change must have obviously happened due to a revolution, right? Yes, my lord. And the revolution was known as Lord Ram, the greatest emperor that ever lived. Jai Shri Ram, Jai Shri Ram, repeated everyone in the room. His ideas and leadership transformed the society of Meluha dramatically, continued Daksha. In fact, the course of history itself was radically altered. But before I continue with Lord Ram's tale, may I make a suggestion? Of course, Your Highness. It is into the third prahar now. Should we move to the dining room and partake of some lunch before continuing with this story? I think it is an excellent idea to have lunch, Your Highness, said Shiva. But may I be excused for some time? There is another pressing engagement that I have. Could we perhaps continue our conversation tomorrow if that is suitable to you? Kanakala's face fell immediately, while Parvateshwar's was covered with a contemptuous grin. Daksha, however, kept a smiling face. Of course, we could meet tomorrow, my lord. Will the beginning of the second hour of the second prahar be all right with you? Absolutely, Your Highness. My apologies for this inconvenience. Not at all, my lord, said an ever-smiling Daksha. Can one of my chariots take you to the destination? That's very kind of you, Your Highness, but I will go there myself. My apologies once again. Bidding a namaste to everyone in the room, Shiva and Nandi walked quickly out. Kanakala looked accusingly at Daksha. The emperor just nodded his head, gesturing with his hands for calm. It's all right. We are meeting tomorrow, aren't we? My lord, we are running out of time, said Kanakala. The Nilkant needs to accept his responsibilities immediately. Give him time, Kanakala. We have waited for so long. A few days is not going to cause a collapse. Parvateshwar got up suddenly, bowed low towards Daksha and said, With your permission, Your Highness, may I be excused? There are more practical things that need my attention as compared to educating a barbarian. You will speak of him with respect, Parvateshwar, growled Kanakala. He is the Nilkant. I will speak of him with respect only when he has earned it through some real achievements, snarled Parvateshwar. I respect only achievements, nothing else. That is the fundamental rule of Lord Ram. Only your karma is important, not your birth, not your sex, and certainly not the color of your throat. Our entire society is based on merit. Or have you forgotten that? Enough, exclaimed Daksha. I respect the Nilkant. That means everybody will respect him. Do subscribe to our e-teaching channel for further interesting videos and audio books. Give us a thumbs up if you like our videos and share with your friends and family. Comment us to improve our work better. Thank you.